It began with the silence. Not the peaceful kind that blankets a forest after snowfall, but the dead, suffocating kind. The kind that swallows the wind, devours birdsong, and stretches over the trees like a shroud. That silence settled in 2 days ago, and I haven't heard another human voice since. I'm Ranger Alex Marin, and I think I'm the last one left. The Green Hollow National Forest spans over 200,000 acres of dense pine and fog-choked ravines. I've worked here for 12 years, long enough to know her moods, when the elk move, when the bears stir, when the trees creak before a storm. But nothing could have prepared me for what's happening now, for what the woods have become. It started a week ago, when Ranger Lewis radioed in from Lookout Post 3, saying he heard singing in the woods. Not music, not the usual drunk campers playing classic rock around a fire, but a child's voice.
A soft lullaby, drifting in on the wind.
We laughed it off at first, told him to ease up on the night patrol whiskey. But then he didn't come back. We found his truck still running, headlights casting long, white fingers across the trees. His boots were by the riverbank, one upright, the other collapsed like it had been kicked off mid-run. No blood. No prints.
Just silence and a broken radio buzzing with static.
The next night, Ranger Hale vanished during her sweep of the Southern Trail Network. I tried to contact her around midnight, but only caught a garbled whisper, "There, in the trees." Then nothing. By morning, we were down to 5. We decided to call in help, state police, maybe even the National Guard, but the phones were dead, and the satellite link kept dropping. The forest was swallowing our signals. Whatever was out there didn't want us reaching out. I volunteered to do a solo run to Lookout Post 2, an old tower about 10 miles north, with a stronger uplink and a flare launcher. I packed light, strapped on my service weapon, and promised the others I'd be back by dusk. That was 3 nights ago. Lookout Post 2 was empty. Not just abandoned, emptied. All the gear was gone.
No food, no radio equipment, no flares.
Just a spiral staircase slick with something dark and sticky that smelled like burnt copper. I didn't ask questions. I just left. When I returned to base camp, it was a ghost town. The gate was open, the lights were flickering, and every cabin door stood ajar.
Ranger Stantosat lay in the mud, soaking under a relentless drizzle.
I called out, walked through every room, every bathroom, every shed. No one answered. No one was left. And then the forest closed in. It's not like it used to be.
The trees move now.
Not just sway with the wind. No, they move.
I've watched trunks twist just out of sight. Branch reach like fingers.
I've heard scratching along the cabin walls even when the breeze has died.
Something is in the woods.
Watching. Waiting.
And every night, just before midnight, the singing returns.
It starts faint, like a memory. A child's voice humming a lullaby I don't recognize, soft and sweet, like they're trying to calm a baby. But there are no children out here. Not anymore. Then the humming turns into whispering.
Voices overlap.
Too many voices, men, women, sobbing, murmuring nonsense in a language that doesn't belong here. And sometimes,
"Hear my name. Alex, come outside."
I haven't slept in 2 days.
I board the windows. I keep the fire, lo so the smoke doesn't rise.
I eat cold beans from a can and count the bullets I have left. 6 rounds.
That se olive got.
But I have to do something. Sitting here is death.
The forest wants me to sit still. It wants me to give up.
I don't know why it took the others, or what it plans to do to me, but I know one thing. It's not going to end with me cowering in a cabin. Tonight, I'm going to make a run for the ranger station on the ridge, the old backup post. It's been sealed for years, but it might still have power. Maps, logs, maybe even a working radio if I'm lucky. If nothing else, I can find higher ground, figure out where the tree line ends.
I wait until the sun sets.
The forest is black before true night even falls. Clouds roll in, thick and unmoving.
The stars don't shine anymore.
It's like something above is watching, and it doesn't want to be seen.
I shoulder my pack, grip the flashlight tight, and step into the trees. Every branch creaks like it knows I'm here.
I walk fast but quiet, avoiding the dry leaves that crunch too loudly.
The flashlight flickers once, then steadies.
I avoid the old trail, The last time someone walked it, they didn't come back. Instead, I cut through the thickets, past the broken remains of Ranger Hale's ATV, rusted and overturned like it had been hurled off the path.
De deeper uno go, the stranger the forest becomes.
Ferns that don't grow in this part of the country twist around oak roots. Mushrooms pulse with a dull green glow. I pass trees carved with symbols I don't recognize, spirals, crooked eyes, jagged stars.
There smells wrong, like rot and wet stone, and there is no sound, no crickets, no owls, no brezze.
Then I see them.
Boot prints.
Several. Leading toward the ridge. But they're not deep enough.
Too shallow for a grown adult.
And there are no signs of a return trail.
I follow them, heart hammering against my ribs.
After 10 minutes, the prints stop abruptly in a small clearing, surrounded by trees that lean inward, like they're listening. In the center of the clearing lies a child's stuffed rabbit. Torn. Stained. Its button eyes gleam in the light.
I don't touch it. As I turn to leave, I hear it again, the humming.
Soft. Close.
And then, a voice behind me.
Alex. I whip around, light shaking wildly across the trees.
No wonder. No movement.
But the rabbit is gone. I run. Branches whip at my face, tearing skin, but I don't stop.
I run until my legs ash, until my lungs burn, until uno sit, the ridge tower. Still standing.
Half covered in ivy.
The door hangs loose, barely clinging to rusted hinges. Inside, there is cold.
Dust chokes every surface, but the generator, miraculously, sits intact in the corner.
I crank it once.
Twice. On the third try, it sputters to life.
Dim lights flicker overhead. I slam the door shut. Barricade it.
Then I find the logbook. The last entry is dated over 30 years ago. Asterisk, we told them not to expand the trails.
Not to go past the Black Hollow.
But they didn't listen. The forest is old. Older than they know. And it remembers.
Asterisco.
The page is stained with something brown. The next several are torn out.
I sit down in the corner, shivering, heart still racing. The lights buzz. Outside, the wind rises. And through the cracks in the walls, I hear the voices again.
Closer now. They're not just singing anymore. They're calling me. By name. The wind didn't just howl that night, it spoke. Through the cracks in the old lookout tower, the forest whispered like it was alive. The generator buzzed faintly behind me, offering weak light that did little to push back the darkness outside. And in that darkness, voices stirred. They were no longer distant, no longer vague. They called to me. Alex. Soft. Beckoning.
Familiar.
It was the voice of Ranger Hale, or something trying to sound like her. I held my breath and leaned closer to the slats in the wooden wall.
My flashlight was dying, the beam flickering like a candle in a storm.
Through the slit, I saw nothing but trees, rows and rows of black pines shifting ever so slightly, even though the air had gone still. Another voice joined hers.
Lewis. Come on, Alex. We found a way out.
No, I watched them disappear. Heard their final transmissions. This couldn't be real. Couldn't be them. The others were gone. Whatever was speaking to me wore their voices like masks. I backed away from the wall, heart pounding, fingers tightening around the old flare gun I'd found under the desk. It had one shot. The flares were designed to reach 2,500 feet, enough for anyone in the area to see. If there was still someone out there. I pushed open the tower window and fired.
The flare burst into the sky with a screeching hiss, painting the forest in a brief, violent red.
For 3 seconds, everything was visible. And that's when I saw them. Not people, asterisk figures star. Dozens of them. Standing perfectly still at the edge of the tree-line. Their limbs too long, their necks tilted too far back. Eyes, too many eyes, glowing with a dim yellow light. And each one had a face I recognized.
Ale. Lewis. Stanton.
Faces I knew, stretched over forms that weren't theirs anymore. Then the flare fizzled out.
Darkness slammed back down like a lid on a coffin. He shut the window.
Locked it. Moved every piece of furniture I could against the door, the windows, the vents. I even covered the slats with duct tape and old maps.
The light from the generator flickered once.
Twice. Then it went dark. The silence returned. But not for long.
Asterisco scratch, 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 asterisco.
It came from the far wall. Then the ceiling.
Then the floor beneath me. A slow, deliberate scraping. Something testing the wood. Testing asterisco me asterisco.
They weren't trying to break in. They were waiting. And worse, they were wearing my friends.
Trattino trattino.
By morning, I'd passed out from exhaustion, head resting on the logbook. No dreams. Just a heavy, oppressive blackness that lingered behind my eyes even after I woke. I opened the logbook again, flipping past the torn pages until I found one more intact entry near the end. Written in shaky, rushed handwriting. Asterisk, she sings to draw them in. The forest opens to her. She takes the form of those we lost.
The deeper you go, the more you forget. The deeper you go, the less human you stay. Asterisco.
Below that, a map. Drawn in pencil, faded, but clear enough to follow. There was a marked location near Black Hollow Creek, about 5 miles from the tower.
Circled in red ink.
It said,
Asterisco asterisco Heart of the Woods.
"Do not enter."
Asterisco asterisco.
I stared at that note for a long time. And then I packed. I needed answers. I needed to know what took my friends. What was stalking me? What was wearing their faces and whispering in the trees? Because hiding wouldn't save me. Only truth would.
Trattino trattino.
The forest was wrong as soon as I stepped back outside. The trees had moved. The path I'd used to get to the tower was gone, erased like lines wiped off a chalkboard. New trails branched off in unnatural directions. Rocks had shifted. Logs that weren't there the day before now blocked the way. I followed the map anyway, compass in hand, navigating by landmarks I hoped hadn't changed.
My boots sunk into earth too soft.
Mud that sucked and sighed like breath. Thorned vines writhed gently as I passed, brushing my arms like fingers.
The silence was absolute. Until he found the clearing again. The same one from the night before.
Except now it was different. At the center stood a tall wooden totem, made of stacked bones and antlers bound together with hair. It hadn't been there before. Around its base, fresh footprints, barefoot, small, like a child's, circled again and again, ending at the totem and vanishing. Humming filled the air.
A lullaby.
I froze. There, sitting in the shadows behind the totem, was a girl. 8, maybe 9. Pale skin. Long black hair that tangled around her shoulders. She wore a red dress, soaked at the hem, and held something in her lap.
A rabbit doll. The same one saw in the clearing yesterday.
She didn't look up. Just kept humming. Soft.
Sweet.
Dreadful. I took a step forward. She stopped. Slowly, her head turned. Too slowly. As if her neck didn't quite work right. Her eyes were bottomless. Black pits that seemed to stretch back forever. "You came," she whispered. Her voice wasn't hers. It was all of theirs. A blend.
A mix of every ranger or gone missing.
Every voice layered into one.
You heard me.
I backed away.
What are you?
She stood. The rabbit doll dropped from her hands. You already know. The trees shuddered, and the ground split open beneath her feet. Roots, thick, dark, pulsating, burst from the soil and wrapped around her legs, lifting her up like a puppet. Her limbs hung limp as the forest carried her into the air, towering over me now, her face still locked in that terrible, neutral stare. "You'll forget who you are," she said, mouth unmoving. "Just like they did."
The roots lang.
I ran.
Trattino trattino.
I didn't stop.
Not even when the branch tore my jacket. Not when thorns ripped across my arms. Not when it tripped and slid down a rocky embankment, scraping my knees bloody.
I ran until the air thinned and the trees grew sparse. Then I saw it. The heart. It wasn't a place. It was a thing. Nestled at the center of a sunless grove stood a colossal, gnarled tree, blackened, leafless, and dead, except it pulsed. With every beat, it let off a deep thrum that vibrated in my bones. Its bark was scarred with thousands of names. Scratched deep. Some I recognized. Hale, Lewis, Stanton. Even mine. Oh. I approached slowly, hand hovering over my gun, not that I believed bullets would help.
When he touched the bark, the word, asterisco shifted asterisco. Suddenly, he wasn't in the forest anymore.
I was in the cabin. Day 1. Back when everything was normal. The team laughing. Hale cooking eggs.
Lewis fixing the broken satellite dish. Everything felt real.
Smelled real. Then the girl appeared again, standing in the window, just outside. No one else noticed her. Except me. I blinked. And I was back.
Standing before the tree, gasping for air, hands shaking.
Behind me, the singing returned. Closer now. She was following me. But the tree had shown me something. A memory. A warning. Or maybe a choice.
He pulled the flare gun again. The last one he'd taken from the tower.
And I aimed it at the tree. If this thing was the heart of the forest, maybe it needed to die. Before I could fire, I heard her one last time. Burn it, and you'll never leave. Her voice trembled with something close to fear. And that's how I knew. I had to do it.
He pulled the trigger.
The flare hit the bark with a thud and exploded in a blossom of red fire.
The tree asterisco screamed asterisco.
Not a metaphor.
It let out a cry like a dying animal, like 100 voices crying out at once. Flames spread fast, faster than natural. Roots shriveled. The ground shook.
The singing stopped.
The forest groaned.
Then everything went quiet. Dead quiet. And then, birds. For the first time in days, I heard birds.
The sky brightened, just a little.
Not full daylight, but not darkness either. I stood alone in a smoldering grove, smoke curling into the air.
No more singing. No more whispers.
But I wasn't safe yet.
Because somewhere behind me, I heard a branch crack.
And someone said my name. Alex. The voice was right behind me, soft, breathy, familiar. But I didn't turn. I couldn't. My legs were frozen, half from exhaustion, half from fear. The grove was still burning. Embers danced through the fog, casting shadows that moved without wind. But the voice, it was human again.
Not twisted.
Not layered.
Alex, please.
I turned slowly. And there she was.
Ranger Ale.
She stood just 10 feet away, half-shadowed, arms limp at her sides. Her uniform was clean. Her face unmarred. Her eyes didn't glow. She looked real. Too real. You burned it, she said.
Her voice cracked.
You burned the heart. I had to.
My voice trembled.
It was controlling everything. Her head tilted. It was everything. And then, her skin began to ripple. It started at the corners of her eyes, stretching and pulling like wet cloth.
Her lips parted in a silent scream.
Her arms jerked backward with a sickening snap.
Bone cracked. Flesh split. The illusion collapsed like a shattered mirror.
It wasn't Hale. Not anymore. The creature collapsed into the dirt, twitching, convulsing, and then it scattered. No body. No blood. Just leaves. Just pieces of bark and hair tangled in roots.
He staggered back, bile rising in my throat.
It had worn her like a costume. And now the forest was unraveling.
Trattino, trattino.
The walk back to the main ranger outpost felt longer than it should have. The trees had changed again. Some had fallen, some now hung like they were weeping, drooping branches thick with black moss. But it was quieter.
No whispers.
No singing. Yet the silence no longer felt like a threat. It felt like aftermath. I passed the old creek, now bone dry. The moss-covered bridge leading to the west cabins had collapsed. Smoke from the burning grove curled into the sky behind me, rising into strange shapes, faces, maybe, but vanishing quickly. The cabin came into view by noon. Or what felt like noon. It was hard to tell time anymore. The sky had settled into a permanent twilight haze, neither day nor night. But the door was still there.
Still slightly ajar.
The boots were still in the mud. My footprints were the only ones in the yard. I entered cautiously. The interior was unchanged. Cold coffee in a tin mug. Bunk beds neatly made.
Radio dead.
I locked the door behind me and sat at the desk. Something was wrong. Not just with the forest, but with me. My hands had stopped trembling. My thoughts were too clear. The fear, the panic, the dread, it wasn't gone, exactly. It just felt muted, distant, like it belonged to someone else. I looked in the mirror above the sink. And I saw it. Not at first, but when I leaned closer, I saw the edge of it. My eyes. The color was off. A ring of dark green had begun to form around the irises.
Barely visible.
But it was there. The same color as the sap that oozed from the heart tree.
Asterisco the deeper you go, the less human you stay. Asterisco. He splashed water on my face. Rubbed my eyes raw.
But the color didn't fade.
Trattino, trattino.
I spent the night in the cabin, door barred, lights off, gun in hand.
No voices came. No scratching.
Just dreams.
Vivid sickening.
I dreamt I was underground, deep beneath the roots, surrounded by others. People I knew. Rangers who were taken.
Ale. Lewis. Stanton.
All of them, kneeling around a tree with no leaves, whispering in unison. Their skin flaking off. Their eyes blank. Their mouths stretched open, full of worms. They were praying. To her.
The girl in red stood at the base of the tree, humming her lullaby.
Her face was cracked porcelain. Her limbs disjointed, marionette-like. She looked up at me and smiled. And I woke up screaming.
Trattino, trattino.
At dawn, again, assuming it was dawn, I heard something new. A chopper. Distant. But real. I scrambled outside, flares in hand. I had no idea if they'd come because of my signal, or if this was something else entirely, but I wasn't going to miss it. The sound grew louder, definitely a helicopter.
Black silhouette against the grey sky.
It circled once, then hovered near the ridge. I fired. The flare arced high, bright red, unmistakable.
The chopper tilted, banking toward me.
Relief surged. But then, I saw it stop. Just hover. And then it slowly turned. And began to fly away.
No. No, 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 no. He screamed, waving my arms, running through the clearing.
I'm here. I'm alive. But they didn't come back. They saw me. And they left.
Trattino, trattino.
Back inside, I turned the emergency radio on again, though it had never worked.
Static, as always.
But then, a voice.
Crackling.
Weak, but clear enough to make out. To any remaining personnel at Green Hollow, this is Ranger Command. The fire was noted. You are advised to remain within forest perimeter. Do not attempt to cross the boundary. Repeat, do not exit the forest under any circumstances.
He stared at the radio. The boundary.
The signal cut again, replaced by a high-pitched shriek, like metal tearing.
Then silence.
What the hell did they mean don't exit the forest? I thought help was outside. I thought survival meant leaving. But now, I wasn't so sure.
Trattino, trattino.
I needed answers. Real ones. I returned to the burned grove. The tree was gone, reduced to smoldering ash. But in the dirt, under the scorched roots, I found something I hadn't expected. A staircase.
So
ancient.
Descending into the earth. He hesitated only a moment.
Then I descended.
The air grew cold. The walls narrowed. The staircase spiraled deep.
My flashlight flickered, but didn't die. At the bottom, a tunnel opened, lined with carvings. Symbols I'd seen before.
Spirals. Crooked stars.
A tree with many eyes. And then, I stepped into a vast cavern. Roots dangled from the ceiling like veins. Pools of black water shimmered in the flickering light. And at the center was a stone altar. On it, bones. Thousands of them. Not just human.
Animal.
Birds. Things I couldn't name. And behind it, carved into the rock, she watches.
Asterisco, asterisco.
I heard breathing. Slow.
Rhythmic.
Not mine. I turned. And saw her.
The girl.
No longer small.
Now towering. Limbs grown long and gnarled.
Hair floating like it was underwater. Eyes endless voids. A crown of antlers sat atop her head, woven with vines and sinew. She was the forest now. And she spoke. You burned my heart.
He raised the gun.
Stay back. She laughed, a sound like cracking trees and bone.
I mean you now, Alex. You walked too deep.
You looked too long. The green ring in my eyes burned. I felt it, something writhing just beneath my skin. Moving. Growing.
You can't leave.
Not really.
You belong to me now.
I aimed at her chest. And fired. The flare struck, but nothing happened. She didn't scream. She didn't fall. She smiled. Then darkness took me.
Trattino, trattino.
I woke hours later, outside the cavern.
In the grove.
Alone.
No sign of the staircase. No sign of her.
But something's changed.
I don't hear the forest anymore.
I feel it. And it feels calm.
Like it's waiting.
And I think I understand now what the others meant when they said they were still here. Because I can still hear their voices, even in the silence. And when I close my eyes, I see the trees breathing.
And somewhere, deep inside me.
I think I've started to breathe with them.
I don't sleep anymore. Not the way you used to.
There's no waking up from this. Not really. I close my eyes and drift, but I'm not resting.
I'm somewhere else. Somewhere beneath the roots. I feel the soil on my skin. I feel it inside my lungs. I don't dream.
I remember memories that aren't mine.
Last night, I saw Trulus' eyes.
The moment before he disappeared. He stood by Black Hollow Creek, confused, flashlight flickering, voice trembling into his radio. Then she came.
Not the girl, not yet.
First, it was the trees. They shifted around him, herding him like cattle. Leading him deeper. Whispers guided his feet, and when he realized he'd lost the path, he was already too far in. Then she sang. And he forgot. His name, his job, his life. He just knelt in the moss and let the roots pull him under. When I woke, my hands were covered in dirt. I don't know how long I stood outside the cabin, fingers buried in the soil, motionless. The forest has begun to accept me. Or claim me. And the worst part?
It feels asterisco good asterisco. Trattino, trattino.
I tried to leave today.
Walked straight west, compass in hand. No trails, no landmarks. Just endless trees.
I marked trunks as I passed, scratched an X into every third tree, dropped stones behind me. After 2 hours, I saw the first X again. Same mark.
Same pattern.
Then I found the stone I'd dropped, still damp from my hand. I hadn't moved forward at all. I was walking in circles. And the forest was letting me. Taunting me.
I screamed into the trees until my throat bled. Something screamed back. Not an animal.
Not human. Something in between.
Trattino, trattino.
That night, I heard voices outside again. But they didn't whisper. They spoke.
Conversing.
Like a meeting of people.
Familiar voices. Stantonesse lauter. Alse canton.
Even Lewis's half-joking sarcasm. They were right outside the door.
He crept to the window, heart pounding. And what he saw?
They were all sitting around a fire.
Just like we used to.
5 of them.
In full ranger gear.
Cooking. Talking. Laughing. Like nothing had ever happened. Like none of this was real. I opened the door.
And the scene vanished.
No fire. No people.
Just a circle of rocks.
And footprints that led nowhere. I fell to my knees.
Tears didn't come. Only the realization.
They weren't haunting me. They were calling me home.
Trattino, trattino.
I returned to the ridge tower the next day. Not for help. I knew that was gone. I went because I needed to see something, anything, that proved I was still me. I climbed the stairs and found the old mirror inside the upper lookout. When I looked into it, I almost didn't recognize my reflection. My eyes were fully green now. Not just a ring, completely green. Like moss. Like leaves. My veins were darker too.
Faint lines under the skin, like Venus. I pressed a hand to the glass.
It rippled. For a moment, I wasn't looking at my reflection anymore. I was looking at her.
The girl in red. She stood inside the mirror, mirroring my every move, head cocked, smile spreading.
You're almost ready, she said.
He staggered back. Ready for what?
I hissed. She didn't answer.
Only raised a hand, my hand, and touched the mirror.
The glass turned black. And when I blinked, I was alone again.
Trattino, trattino.
Back at the cabin, I tore up the floorboards. I don't know why. Some part of me knew.
And beneath the boards, he found something buried in the crawl space.
A ranger's badge. Lewis's. But it was cracked in half. And beside it, his notebook. Soaked, but legible. Most of the pages were gibberish. Rambling.
Repetitive. She bites in the roots.
She feeds on names. She wears our skin.
Again and again.
But one line stood out.
Asterisco, asterisco, you don't leave the forest.
You become it.
Asterisco, asterisco.
That's when I understood. We were never meant to patrol this land. Not long term. The forest didn't want us here. Not out of hostility.
Out of asterisco, unger asterisco.
It takes people, and it keeps them.
Not as corpses.
As extensions of itself. Every ranger who disappeared didn't die. They changed.
Trattino, trattino.
The final proof came later that night.
Heard a voice again.
But this time, not from the woods.
From the radio.
Clear. Strong. Alex, she said, we're waiting. Where?
He whispered, lips dry, fingers trembling over the radio s cracked dial.
You already know. She was right. I did.
Back to the grove. Back to the underground altar.
Where it all began.
Where it all ends. Trattino, trattino.
I returned before sunrise. The grove was cold, but still. The remains of the heart tree had scattered in the wind. And where the altar once stood, now sat something new. A doorway. Tall, arched, made from twisted roots, gently pulsing.
An open gate into blackness. He stepped closer.
The forest held its breath.
One final choice.
Go forward.
Or burn it all down.
I reached for my last flare. But I didn't light it. Because I saw her again, the girl. Not in a dress. Not in a child's body. She stood at the gate now in her full form. Tall. Antlered. Radiating silence. Her eyes met mine. And I didn't feel fear. I felt peace. Like returning home after years of war. Step through, she said. Let go. I hesitated. But just for a second. Then
he walked forward.
And everything changed.
Trattino, trattino.
I don't remember the transition. Only that I opened my eyes on the other side of the gate. And saw the forest from above. Not from a tower. From the canopy itself. I was the trees. I was the moss. I was the wind through the leaves. I looked down at the ranger cabin, empty. I saw the chopper that once passed overhead, frozen in a sky that had no sun.
He saw the faces of the others, Stanton, Ale, Lewis, etched into bark, smiling, silent, asterisco eternal asterisco.
And I saw new ones too.
Campers.
Hikers.
New rangers. Entering the forest.
Unaware. Curious. I didn't sleep the night I found Foster's corpse hanging in my station, his cold, glassy eyes aimed right at me like an accusation. I couldn't.
He sat against the wall with my service revolver in my lap, the radio silent except for faint static.
The forest was quiet again, but not in the comforting way I remembered from my early years here. It was the stillness of something that had already hunted, already fed. I was done pretending I didn't believe. The woods were alive in a way we were never meant to understand. They weren't just hiding something. They were something.
A living entity with intelligence.
Hunger. Will. The signs had been there all along, in the disappearances, in the erratic wildlife behavior, in the distorted landmarks. The forest anomalies we used to chalk up to natural shifts, those were the creatures' camouflage adapting. And now, there was no one left. Just me.
The last park ranger of Marropines.
That morning, I buried Foster's body behind the ranger station, beside the makeshift crosses for the others. I carved his name with my pocket knife into a weathered slab of pine wood.
My hands trembled the whole time.
I didn't cry. I think the forest had already drained that from me. I had a decision to make, stay and die like the rest, or go deeper and end this. My mind reeled back to that ancient map Foster had once shown me, back when things were just starting to unravel. There was one area on that old parchment circled in black charcoal, a place never patrolled, a place we were never told to chart. Unfit for observation, the margin note had said. But maybe that was the center of it all. I gathered my gear, not to survive, but to confront. I left a final entry in the logbook. August 5th.
I'm going into the woods beyond Site D. I believe the heart of this thing is there.
If anyone finds this, don't come looking.
Burn everything. Salt the ground.
This place is not meant for humans. With one last glance at the watchtower, my prison and sanctuary, I headed east. The trees seemed to lean in closer the further I went, their twisted limbs almost whispering warnings. No birds. No wind.
Just the creak of branch and the crunch of my boots on the leaves.
After hours, the forest changed. The pines became massive, impossibly wide and tall, their bark charred and pulsing like skin. The air grew thick, metallic, and warm. I was sweating but freezing, my thoughts drifting like leaves on a dying stream. Then I saw it. A clearing.
No, a asterisco und asterisco in the earth.
At the center was a massive, gnarled root system, shaped like a spiral, curling inward to what looked like a yawning mouth, a pit lined with glistening tendrils and flickering shapes inside.
It asterisco breed asterisco.
I could hear it inhaling the forest itself. I almost dropped my gear and fled. But then I saw them.
Faces.
Faces of the others, Rangers Miller, Jones, even Foster. Half-formed, embedded in the twisted bark, their mouths moving silently.
Trapped in the forest.
Not dead. Absorbed. I approached the pit with trembling hands, holding a flare and the last jerry can of fuel I'd taken from a station. I didn't have a grand plan. I just knew this place needed to burn. Whatever the forest had become, it had to end here. I poured the fuel around the spiral, sloshing it on the roots, on the grotesque bark flesh, on the very lip of that monstrous throat. Then I struck the flare. The ignition was immediate, unnatural. The flames hissed and screamed. Not crackling wood, but voices, hundreds, thousands, howling in pain and rage.
The forest asterisco shook asterisco. The earth trembled.
Trees groaned like wounded animals. A wind picked up, furious and hot, trying to blow the fire back toward me, but I backed away, eyes fixed on the burning wound. It didn't die easily. The flames were pulled inward, sucked into the pit like breath. A final surge of heat slammed into me, throwing me back. I hit the ground, ears ringing, nose bleeding. For a moment, I thought I was dead. But when I opened my eyes, silence.
Real silence.
Birdsong returned. The air smelled like real smoke. Not sulfur. Not rot. I stood, bruised and broken, but breathing.
The spiral was gone.
In its place was scorched earth, black and cracked like a scar. The trees had pulled back, the suffocating weight lifted. I hiked back to the ranger station, limping with every step. It took a day, maybe two, I lost track. The forest didn't fight me this time.
It let me go.
I contacted Central Dispatch, not about what happened, but about witnessing a wildfire. I made up some tale about lightning strikes, evacuations, and the tragic deaths of the other rangers. They bought it. Or maybe they just didn't want to not buy it. They sent in a replacement team. I was offered reassignment. I declined. I don't work in forests anymore.
Now, I live in the city. Concrete and noise.
Safe.
Sterile.
The trees here are ornamental.
They don't asterisco watch asterisco you when you sleep.
Sometimes, I wake up in a cold sweat, the taste of smoke in my mouth, and I swear I hear the forest breathing beneath my floorboards. Because here's the truth. I didn't kill it.
I asterisco wounded asterisco it. The forest is still out there, alive. Asterisco waiting asterisco.
It remembers me. And one day, it might call me back.